She makes me laugh. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Carol DeBonte. I'm the Director of Nutrition and Wellness for Morrison Living, and I am a dietitian. So I'm here today to talk about dementia, but specifically about dementia in relationship to dining. So that's, a different approach. So just walking around the room, everybody works in the dementia unit, and that's really fabulous. So you've had a lot of training already about dementia. So hopefully this will enhance that training and bring it together for the dining experience that you go through. Just to look at some numbers, this is astounding to me. 50 million people worldwide have some types of dementia. 10 million new cases each year worldwide. It is just a really horrendous disease process. And then you look at just Alzheimer's, 5.8 million Americans have Alzheimer's, which is one type of dementia. There are many types of dementia, but that's just one type. And probably the majority of your residents have Alzheimer's. 1 in 10 Americans, 65 and older, have Alzheimer's. And they don't all live in memory care units. We probably have quite a few in our independent living as well as in home settings. So just to give you a feeling of the impact of dementia. What does this feel like to you? Does it make any sense whatsoever? It's just confusing, isn't it? It's jumbled. It doesn't even flow. Think about somebody with dementia being handed a menu. This is what it feels like. It's just jumbled words that they're trying to put together, and it can frustrate them. So that is why we need to work and help them to navigate through the messages. As we know, dementia primarily is a loss of and decline in memory. It is one of the biggest concerns. Everybody will say, I can't find my keys. And elders get worried because they're really frightened that they will not have the cognitive ability to manage. Mental decline is normal for aging. It is normal. But the loss of the memory and the severe mental decline is what is the concern with the dementia diagnosis. So we're going to talk again about dementia, and we're going to look at the 3 stages as how it relates to dining. So you look at early stage, which may not be resident even in your community yet, into the memory care. They may be in assisted living, they might be in independent or home. Confusion about time and place, mood swings, which can have an impact at dining time, memory loss, forgetting to come to meals, forgetting that they just ate, for an example, forgetting things that are on the stovetop. You hear horrible stories all the time about individuals that have caused fires in their homes because they've left the stove on. And then often individuals with this stage start to isolate themselves because they are embarrassed by these changes in their own selves. Middle stage is where you have a lot of residents in your community, in your memory loss, that are in the middle stage. And this is where you see difficulty following conversations. So you may have, and I'm sure you experience this, the same conversation over and over with individuals. Changes in food intake. This is extremely prevalent. And this is one of your biggest challenges, is these changes. So what I like today, a week from now, they may not want to eat at all. And so as you try to predict and meet their needs, you may find their needs are changing, and you have to be very on top of what they are looking for. Environmental factors, we're going to talk a lot about that and how it impacts the dining experience. Loss of impulse control, you've seen it yourself. There's some individuals maybe sitting at the table and all of a sudden have an outburst with another resident at that table. Nutrition, one of the biggest things that you see with dementia, before it's truly diagnosed, you often see significant weight loss in individuals with dementia. Undernutrition is common with dementia, and 20 to 45% of individuals can experience significant weight loss over a year. So Do you guys weigh the residents here on a monthly basis? So watching that weight is critical. And seeing the significant changes is also what you want to be looking at. So if you see that change, you may even see it in their intake, that you almost can predict that weight change based on what you're seeing at meal times. Why is it such a concern for our elders? The frailty, reduced mobility falls into place. The risk of falling, skin breakdown, their health conditions might get exacerbated because of the weight loss, and it can impact their mortality or death rate. So really looking at nutrition as that big picture for the overall health of an individual is very critical. So let's jump into the environment. We're going to talk about the lights in your new dining area, the new memory area, noise, table design, and evaluating the current situation. Look at this picture of 4 different floor finishes. What do you see? The matte one up there, very calming, isn't it? You don't see, but look at the bottom right-hand one. Look at the gloss. In most institutions, high gloss used to be considered the type of floor. It shows how clean it is. It just makes you feel like it's really bright. But look at the shadows. Look at what happens with that. When you have dementia and you're losing parts of the brain activity, that can be very disturbing to an individual. So high gloss floors are the least preferred floors. The matte floor, the top left-hand side, is the actual preference. And that's what you guys built into your floors. The new areas, they have that natural wood look, but they don't have that gloss feel to it. Noise. It is really funny talking earlier today. The water fountain that's in the new dining rooms kicked on. It was so loud, everybody commented on the noise. Noise can be the absolute #1 reason that residents stop eating with memory problems. Really think about it. Go next time you're in the dining room, tonight I'm assuming, just listen to the noise that's in that dining room. It can be anywhere from a cart wheeling down the hallway, people talking around the corner at maybe the nurse's desk. Now that your visitors are coming in, it can be visitors walking down the hall, talking, and the noise behind the line as well as in the back of the kitchen area. So the noise is really critical. Residents will get scared from the noise. They will stop eating often. And very frequently, eating disorders or eating changes that happen are related to this environmental factor. So really look at that. That can be very, very impactful. What do you see with this picture here? It's dark, okay. Wouldn't you consider this like fine dining? You know, the white tablecloth. But think about this as the vision of a resident with the, dementia. This is part of the disease process. They lose their capabilities. So what might, like this room, might feel like it's light enough, it would potentially be too dark for an individual eating. So it can have that impact. You can barely see the dishes on the white dishes on the white tablecloth. There's no contrast there. You can barely see the glassware, and some of it, the ones on the right-hand side, you can't tell if there's any water in them or not. That's the experience that the resident with dementias may be experiencing. Look at the difference when you have contrast and bright colors. One of the areas that really is being looked at is the dishes on the right, where it's the white dish where the food doesn't contrast with the color, but the color rim around the outside of it can be very beneficial. Adding, you can see that on the left is the plain tabletop, or you can add placemats to add additional contrasting. So another benefit with placemats, if you have a resident that has a tendency of not understanding where their space is, they may be reaching over to another residence to get their glassware, their food, a placemat can be a really great intervention where it provides the definition of this is where my plate, my cups are. So try that instead of a verbal, no, that's Miss Jane's glassware. Try using, say, a placemat, and you may find just that intervention can be really beneficial for somebody. Again, looking at the environmental. This is actually a memory care unit. Doesn't this look like one of your units now? With the countertop, the cook pots, it looks very home-like as far as the dining experience. The only difference you see now is no plexiglass like we do today's world, but basically you can see the dishes with the colored rim. It really gives some definition there. The countertop is going to be a great asset for you for dining. So right now, you will have four top tables for the 16 residents that will be in the memory care. But what if a resident really is struggling with their roommate? They're having some behavior issues, for example, maybe anxiety about eating there. Have them sit at the countertop. There, they're sitting and basically by themselves, but not by themselves. They won't feel like they're at a table isolated from other residents. And this has worked at this memory care unit extremely well. So your countertops are going to be a true benefit to you to utilize that way. You can have a couple different residents around the countertop, and they can feel like they have somebody there but not have to socialize, or socialize with the individual behind the countertop, but not have that interaction of too many people in their space. You want to be looking at square tables, which is what they're putting in, much better than round. Chairs with arms are really important. It helps to define the space for them when they're eating. Try to avoid any tablecloths or patterns. Even this countertop is quite patterned. I would suggest, if I was here, putting a plain placemat there so that it really does, it kind of breaks up that pattern. Be careful about oversetting the table. Know your resident. If your resident does not independently pick up utensils, don't put too many utensils out, maybe none at all, and give them a utensil with each course. It can actually be beneficial for them to be as independent as possible. What do you see here? Tomb. Does that look like some of the trays right now? That might be, no? Oh, good. I'm so glad to see you say no. But this can potentially be what happens when you're planning. You can see there's 4 beverages, there's so many things in bowls. Too much all at once. Courses is really what's critical here. So communicating at mealtime. This can be a challenge, because as you move out of where you are now with the COVID world and having pre-selected menus, and the dining rooms open up, and you will go back to the, where they'll sit down and you can ask them, do you want roast beef, or do you want the tuna sandwich? This is where you're going to have to use some of these communication skills, such as asking what they would like to eat. When you come to the menu, think of that first slide with all that jumble on it. We don't want to speak jumble or have them look at it. So what you want to be thinking of is 5 words. If you have to ask them what they'd like to eat, it should be 5 words or less. So you don't want to say, would you like the roast beef with mashed potatoes and green beans, or would you rather have the tuna salad with coleslaw? It's way too much. They will never remember. So they may only hear the tuna salad and say tuna salad when they did not want that. So keep it simple, or bring out a sample of what you have to offer, and they can pick it. Because how many times have you brought food out to the table and they said, no, I don't want that, I want what she has? I'm sure that's happened to you. So that's why it's helpful to learn those, how to ask. They may not answer you, or they may just look at you and they're not going to give you an answer which one it is. This is where your skills as knowing your residents and what they would like to eat fall into play. And again, trying to avoid having too many conversations during the mealtime that are not related to the residents. Sitting down with the residents, enjoying their time with them is important. there are some don'ts that we want to do. The last one is probably the big one. You want to avoid saying to the resident, if it doesn't taste right to you, or we'll get you something else. Well, right off the bat, they're going to be scared. So you want to avoid putting in any kind of fear or concerns with the resident. You also may be aware that residents right after breakfast, has anybody ever come out and say, when's breakfast? Has that happened? So there's a couple things happening there. One, they may still be hungry. They may not have eaten enough. There's a possibility that they were up all night long, so now they're really hungry and they need more to eat. So rather than constantly redirecting them and saying, you just had breakfast, you have to wait for lunch. Correct. Offer a snack, offer a beverage. That's where your counters are going to be wonderful. You can say, hey, why don't you sit down? Let me get you something to drink, and maybe get a cookie or something. Then they feel comfortable. They're not being redirected and told that the meal's not there, because something's going on. They're either hungry or thirsty, or there's some need that they have, and they're coming out and asking about the meal. And then at the meal time itself, prompting is really important, but bringing out the meal in service time. So don't bring everything out at once. Don't preset the salad, the soup, the dessert. You want to do everything in courses. If the resident is not initiating starting to eat, verbally give them directions to get started, or if it's too complex, don't preset the table, as I mentioned earlier. Hand them, say if you bring the soup, hand them the spoon so that they can get started. When you bring the main course, you can hand them the fork. This is where you may want to look at for the resident if they need help with any kind of cutting up the food. A couple things you can do. One, if they are comfortable, do it at the table, not in advance. They need to have the memories of the food. If you bring everything cut up, then it's not going to look like a chicken breast. It's not going to look like the food item, so that cannot bring back memories and have the comfort of eating. So that's why it can be really beneficial for them if you can cut it up, if they're willing to let you do it at that point. Know your resident. If you're helping them to cut up the food in front of them and they get agitated, then that's the cue, the trigger to you to do it in advance, okay? 3 big meals may be a problem. So that might be something that you need to be looking at. And try to avoid doing anything else during the meal. No med passes, no checking blood sugars, or any other kind of tasks during the mealtime. And really look at the tables. Does that table look like dining? Because you're going to have a great room there where you have the activities on one side and the dining tables on the other, kind of an L shape. Make sure that those 4 dining tables look like a dining, because you want them to trigger when they go into that side of the dining room. Now it's mealtime. They may have just been on the other side for an activities, but you want to trigger that so it stimulates the brain to say now it's time to eat. So that's why the dining table should look like a dining table for those memories. And then, every time you sit down, you can see, you want that, at the dining table, let the resident know, even if they sit with the same 4 people, let the resident know who are they sitting with, and just reintroduce them each time. It can relieve their anxiety because they may actually not remember who their table mates are, even if it's their roommate or next door neighbors. Make eye contact. I laugh because now that we all have these masks, there's very little contact that we can have with residents. So really important to have that eye contact, really connect with the resident. And then modeling behavior. So this is really a technique in dining that can be very beneficial. With residents with dementia, they may stop eating. And so if you put them at a table where other residents are eating well, they may model that behavior and actually re-engage in the dining experience. We normally would think, oh, we'll take them and put them over on X table that we can assist them and cue them more. They may actually do better by being at the table where they can model other people's behavior. And then obviously recognize the triggers. What triggers do you think might happen at the dining room? What do you think might happen where they may stop eating? What's that? Noise. So that's something, if they hear somebody walking down the hallway, because think about your new dining room. There's it's an L shape, so there's going to potentially be people walking by. I had a community where the staff was walking by, and every time a staff member walked by, one of the residents would get up and follow the staff member. So what they did at this community is they made a rule that during the meal times, nobody was walk by the dining room. The residents stopped getting up. No other behavior changes, nothing else had to be done. Basically, we all changed our behavior. That particular place, it was a big square, so we just had to walk all the way around instead of basically cutting the quick hallway. It made a huge difference for the residents because they could not see any activity. Something else to think about is the noise from the servery area. So as we are clearing tables, are we making some noise, some rattling noise that the resident thinks, oh, I'm done, I have to go because they're clearing the table. So be careful of that, clearing the tables and the dishes from that perspective. What other triggers do you think might happen? A resident leaving before they finish, so trying to figure out why are they leaving, Really important to serve promptly so that time between meals can be real concern. So if a resident is getting up and leaving, why? So you want to be looking at, do they have food? Have they forgotten? Do they need to have some cueing to, that they still need to finish their food if they are willing to do that? Was there something that happened that they got up to leave? Are they uncomfortable? Is there something, why they're feeling, that they can't sit during the meal time? So all those triggers are things that you want to look at. There's another one. I was at a memory care community, and two gentlemen were sitting at a table by the window with their baseball hats on. And I thought, this is kind of strange. Typically, elder gentlemen don't wear baseball hats inside, especially during mealtime. So striking up a conversation, I asked them about it. They told me they can't see their food because of the light coming through the window, which seemed so pleasant, but it was glare. And so they put the baseball hat on so that they could see their meals. So with your new dining rooms, in the dining area, you have two sets of windows. One set has the overhang on it, but the other set is open. Watch those windows. Do you need to pull the curtains over? It may not seem so bright to you, but if you notice residents aren't eating, it might make a difference. So one of the things that you can look at is if somebody is having some visual problems, maybe they should sit with their back to the window so that the lighting doesn't bother them. For the individuals that may get up and wander, maybe they need to sit with their back to the hallway so they don't see anybody coming through. So think about the 4 spots on the table. What's the best spot to sit at to help them so that something doesn't trigger them to stop eating? Can you think of any other triggers that you've experienced in your dining? How about other residents speaking up? That can also be a concern where it's agitating to another resident. So again, looking at who's sitting where can be very beneficial. So let's just look at those stages again as far as what we can do in the dining. Early stages, forgetfulness. Going away from pre-ordering meals to ordering it at the point of service will be very beneficial. Difficulty communicating thoughts. Getting to know your residents and what they like to eat so you can anticipate their needs can be, again, helpful. And knowing that their preferences changed. This is something that just is astounding to me, where individuals that never ate certain foods are now eating those foods. So being aware of those changes in food preferences can be helpful. And then unable to hold attention through a whole meal, as we talked about. In the middle stages, so much more confusion can start to happen. Really, why am I here? What can I do? A lot more strategy on your part to engage them into the dining experience. May not know how to use utensils. In the middle stage of dementia, handheld or finger foods can be extremely beneficial. Really start to think about that, not just giving everybody a sandwich, but some other creative handheld foods can really help the individual to stay independent, because our goal is to have them be as independent as possible with the meal experience and not have to have even queuing if possible, so that they can enjoy their meals. Refusal to sit during the entire meal time. So you may have to do multiple meals and plan more snacks for an individual if they really are struggling. And may not see the food as food. That's really scary in the middle stage, where they start to think that the food is something else. And it really can be very challenging for each of you to work with the residents when they think that the food is some other kind of item and they won't touch it. And hiding food. Now that's not all that uncommon. Residents may want to hide food or take it back with them, put it in their walker basket, things of that sort. The late stages you probably won't see a lot of late stages in your memory care unit, but just so that you know that it becomes harder and harder to have the ability to eat, chew food, swallow food. Liquids become more of a commonplace in the late stages. And we often have to do a lot more nutrition interventions with enhanced calories in the foods and things of that sort to help them to have the best nutrition they can. So again, just to kind of summarize mealtime solutions, you really want to recognize each individual resident, what they need to do. Look at the environment. I can't emphasize that environment as more. Look at the temperature of the room. Look at the temperature of the lighting in that room. Be aware, residents may not be able to independently sense hot food anymore. This is a safety concern for individuals, especially in middle stage and on. And what that means is that when you bring out the coffee or the soup, the hot food, it needs to be at a safe temperature for them, because they may not be able to express to you that they just burnt their mouth on the hot tea or something. So make sure, be aware of that. Avoid mixing foods up. The resident will serve that the way that they would like to. And encourage that independent eating, either through offering one utensil at a time, offering soups in a mug, for an example, handheld foods, as well as verbal cueing can be very helpful for an individual to have that, to stay, in the ability to feed themselves and not required to be fed, that they would have to move on to another level of care. Here, we try to look at different ways that we can manage the textures of the food, the finger foods, and actually fortify foods to get that extra nutrition. And examples of handheld foods, we'll be thinking outside the box of different ways that we can serve food, and so that it's not just fried food, that it can be handheld or always sandwiches. And of course, that fortified foods, enhancing the calories, the protein, so that if they are eating less and less, they can still get the nutrition that they need. And those are the challenges that you can experience as you're working with individuals in memory care. It can be extremely difficult at times, because day to day, meal to meal, there may be changes. Food preferences can change. One of the big issues that you may want to be aware of is sleep. Residents that do not sleep well all night long are more challenged. We've done some studies on this, where the dining experience can be extremely challenged. So you're coming on typically on the evening meal, But if you notice that they're really struggling with it, it might mean that they're not getting enough sleep for that evening meal, and we need to look at their sleep patterns. That can be much more helpful for them. Also, looking at those new environmental, as you move into your new memory care unit, what's the environment going to be like? Is it going to be more challenging? Is it going to be different for them? And really working with them as you move into the new community location. What questions does anybody have? Does anybody have any challenges right now that you'd like to talk in the